Chivalry 2 is supposed to be a medieval hack-and-slash fighting game created by Torn Banner Studios and released April 23, 2021. I say supposed to be because the game is not a medieval hack-and-slash fighting game. It's an incomplete product that feels like it's in a beta state. For context, I've played since launch with 4 of my friends, one of which played with me pretty much every day I asked him to, and we have come to this conclusion. The game needs serious work to be a contender in this already niche market of games, and just about all of the mechanics are broken. Most of the conquest maps are completely one-sided, favoring either the Masons or Agathians. The few that can go either way are primarily TDM. This can be due to a variety of reasons, including spawn distance and objective. Siege weapons are completely broken, and more often than not, do more harm than good. Torn Banner has released patches that fix menial issues and removed a blatantly overpowered, deceptive, and downright broken weapon, but has otherwise not taken any steps to actually make mechanics featured and stressed in the tutorial functional. Class balancing makes no sense. Damage increases and reductions are improperly distributed throughout the classes. Shields and one-handed weapons have significant advantages over two-handed weapons. And archers. There are some smaller gripes that I will get into as the video progresses, but for now, that's the big 7. Before we formally get into the bad, I would like to praise Torn Banner in what they did well, and perhaps justify why I've sunk so much time into a game that I have come to hate. One of the most obvious praises that we'll start with is the graphical fidelity. Although graphics do not make a game, it doesn't hurt that Chivalry 2 is easy on the eyes. I wouldn't mind if the game was 8-bit, polygonal, or otherwise graphically inept, as I'm more focused on gameplay, mechanics, and story when it comes to my analyses, but in a world where pretty colors sell copies, Civ 2 definitely succeeds, especially when compared to their first endeavor back in 2012. For some specific examples, generally the maps are quite pretty to look at. This is especially clear when it comes to the most recent map additions. Both Galencourt and Courtyard are very aesthetically pleasing, along with Lionspire, Tournament Grounds, and the Pit. They are heavily stylized and fit the period well. Characters shift from being completely unscathed and in shiny, fresh armor to becoming worn, bloodied, and even singed by fire as they progress through combat. The blood spilled on the ground, the gore, and the ragdoll of bodies is a big plus too. Lastly is the customization, which most people complain about a severe lack of, but I think there are plenty. As you level up classes and weapons, you unlock more dynamic and visually appealing skins for those weapons and classes. There are also significant armor differences between Agatha and the Masons, so it's not like the devs just copy-pasted armor from one side to the other and changed the color from red to blue, or vice versa. You see a large variance of soldiers on the battlefield, and it is always evident when someone has taken the time to swag out their favorite character. The gameplay, although simplistic due to broken mechanics that we'll get into later, is rewarding and satisfying. Managing to flank a line of enemies and cleaving them into a sloppy mess gives a real sense of pleasure, however morbid that statement may be. Holding the line with your band of IRL brothers in arms or pushing and holding an objective with 31 other randoms gives the fulfillment of large-scale medieval combat. Picking favorable engagements to not only get kills, but even the odds in a 1v2, assist a struggling teammate, find an opening to slay a pesky archer, or gank the shit out of someone that has not gone outside, showered, or spoken to another human in 5 days gives players a sense of tact and impactful decision-making. But seriously, if you're over level 100, something is gravely wrong with you. Please seek help. Take a break. Turn it off.
Isaac? Kava, what's going on?
Isaac! Hey!
Most weapons also feel quite nice, balanced, and generally have their strengths and weaknesses. To break it down into layman's terms, weapon viability is based on speed and damage. One-handed weapons sacrifice damage for speed, two-handed weapons sacrifice speed for damage. Reach is also something to consider, with both one-handed and two-handed classes having variance in reach based on your weapon of choice. Some examples of this variance would be the Greatsword, which is a great sword. It has long reach and good damage, but is one of the slowest weapons in the game to balance it. The Maul has practically no reach, is very slow, but is so powerful that it can outright one-hit 2 classes if the correct move is performed. The Spear and now Rapier are just stupid. The ability to poke from a long range and hide behind a shield is a cowardly way to play and relies on luck to deal damage. If Civ 2 wasn't broken to its core, I don't think this weapon would get much attention, as many of your attacks would be blocked instead of poking straight through. As much as I'd love to commend the game on more than what was just mentioned, that's about it. Chivalry 2 has an amazing shell, but once you dive into the game and mechanics, it slowly breaks down your sanity. Like I said right at the start, this game feels like a beta, and I mean that sincerely. It feels like an unfinished product, which is another trend that we are seeing in games today. Imp Lemon said it best.
15 years ago, you'd go to the store, purchase the game, and own the finished product. It's inherently unsatisfying to pay full price for a game and not have it resemble a finished product until long after you've stopped caring.
Just to reiterate before the YouTube comment dweebs flame me, which they'll do anyway, everything stated here and in all other YGS videos are my opinions. I've played Chivalry 2 for over 60 hours and collaborated with close friends and community members to arrive at these points. I've consumed content from other creators as well, and they share similar opinions to me. Also, whether or not my suggested fixes would work in practice has yet to be seen, but that's sort of the point of videos like this. These games are broken, and I'm trying desperately to offer solutions to make these games more enjoyable for not just myself, but everyone playing. You may agree with me, have your own opinions on making the game better, or even still you may think that the game is fine as is and that my points are irrelevant. I'm not discrediting anyone else's opinions, but my opinion is that I don't like the game and these changes could make the game better. With that being said, let's give this game a deep dive and really break down why it's fundamentally non-functional. The game needs serious work to be a contender in this already niche market of games, and just about all of the mechanics are broken. So when you first start the game, you enter a title sequence, are prompted to choose Agatha or Mason, and enter the tutorial. The tutorial teaches you everything you need to know about combat and chivalry. There are 3 different types of attacks: sweeps, overheads, and pokes. Pokes are fast, but deal the least damage. Sweeps can hit multiple enemies at once, but is slow unless you drag correctly. Overheads do the most damage, but can typically only hit one target at a time. You can charge any of these 3 attack types, and it will trigger a heavy attack that deals more damage, but leaves you open for longer. Since I mentioned drags, let's explain that real quick. Basically, when you swing your weapon, you want to rotate your character to go with your swing. If your swing comes from the right, you want to look left so your weapon connects earlier. If you go for an overhead, you want to look down for the same reason. This is a small optimization in the grand scheme of things, but a good trag could be the difference between landing a hit and getting a hit, or at least that's the theory. In practice, though, it really doesn't make much of a difference. It's always something you want to be mindful of, but it will rarely determine the outcome of an engagement, and I hardly see players going out of their way to drag. If they do, they're also going to be the type to swing, drag, crouch, block, jump, repeat. Those hyper-sweaty fun ruiners that you'll inevitably find in every multiplayer game.
Isaac?
You're taught interruptions, ways to regain initiative or priority, which is a buzzword that means you become the oppressor instead of the defender. These are jabs, kicks, ripostes, and counters. Jabs are a quick and close-range interrupt that staggers your opponent if they are swinging. Kicks are a bit slower, are also close range, but will break an opponent's block. The tutorial states that this should stagger your opponent if done correctly, and leave a window open for a free hit. This is hit and miss. Kicks are more consistent at giving you a window of opportunity for that free hit, but the stagger time for jabs leaves no such window, and opponents can typically raise their block and avoid that damage, making it a near useless mechanic that never sees use. To put it simply, kicking and jabbing are high-risk, low-reward mechanics. The range is so mediocre that you could be hugging your opponent and still miss. The speed is low, leaving you vulnerable for a long period of time. And if you whiff, jab while an opponent is blocking, or kick while an opponent is swinging, you're going to get smacked. And again, because of these things, kicks and jabs hardly see use. I use kicks in my gameplay against turtles, but more tenured players will be able to dash away and punish me for trying to open them up. It's very circumstantial and would benefit from better auto-tracking, speed, range, or a combination of the 3. These mechanics could be failing due to latency, but I have averaged well below 100 ping for my entire time playing. If latency is the determining factor, then Torn Banner needs to realize that not every player is hardwired into their already janky servers and extend the stagger time for successful kicks and jabs. The next mechanics I would like to discuss are ripostes and counters. Riposts are pretty much automatic. Once you have successfully blocked, if you initiate an attack within half a second, it is considered a riposte and is a basic response to your opponent. You lose a bit of stamina, but it gives you the initiative, forcing your opponent to respond with a defensive maneuver. Counters, on the other hand, are completely broken and offer very little incentive for reading your opponent. The equivalent of what a counter in Civ 2 should be is what a parry in the Dark Souls series has been for over 10 years. It should be a direct counter to an opponent, leaving them vulnerable for a devastating counterattack. It is supposed to be a very skillful and risky maneuver that is high risk, high reward. Instead, it's just a riposte, but you don't lose any stamina. Allow me to elaborate. So a counter in Chivalry 2 is when you initiate the same type of attack that an opponent is in the midst of, but right before contact is made with you. You auto-block the attack and counter the opponent, which should result in you landing a direct hit. In fact, counters are supposed to auto-block all incoming hits of the same type for a short time, meaning you should have the opportunity to block a multitude of sweep attacks and counter all attacking opponents, resulting in you turning the tide of a 1vx. This does not happen. This has never happened. This mechanic does not work. If you notice an opponent is spamming sweeps and you counter his sweep, they always have enough time to ready their guard and block the counter. The only time the hit goes through is if the opponent fails to ready their block, attempts to dodge but is still caught in the range of the swing, or the opponent simply fails to input anything and allows themselves to get hit. Counters should most closely resemble the Warden's crushing counter skill in For Honor. You initiate an attack in response to an opponent's attack. The opponent is blocked and your attack goes through for a guaranteed hit. But like we just discussed, this is designed to only mitigate stamina loss instead of rewarding the player with any sort of tangible offense or defense in a 1vx. On top of that, the window for attacks being auto-blocked is laughably small and may as well be non-existent. It feels like it is literally a handful of frames that are auto-blocked when really it should be a couple of seconds. This would give your swing the time it needs to complete and for you to make your next move, either attacking again or readying your block, depending on the situation. To make matters even worse for the counter, most enemies attack in waves and will purposefully stagger their attacks or vary their attack type, making it near impossible to utilize this mechanic effectively if it were to even be functional in the first place. It would take little effort to fix this, but Torn Banner has doubled down on counters placed in the game and has recently added a page to the home screen detailing that the only incentive for countering an opponent is to mitigate the loss of stamina from otherwise blocking normally. In order to make combat more rewarding and fairer in 1v1s and 1vx engagements, the counter needs to be buffed and taken much more seriously. If I am skilled enough to notice that my opponent spams sweeps or has raised their arms for an overhead, and I am quick enough to match their move for a counter, I should be rewarded with 1. A guaranteed hit on my opponent, 2. A 1 to 2 second window for all hits of any type to be auto-blocked, and 3. No stamina loss for the swing or auto-blocks. Counters require skill and precise timing. The game even considers them to be a perfect parry, yet your only reward is saving stamina. Weak counters are one of the many reasons why combat in this game boils down to hit, block, hit, block, hit, block. Feints are another mechanic on paper, but sees very little use, maybe as a mix-up or on accident. All you have to do is initiate another attack before you're fully dedicated to your first. For example, you go for a sweep but feint into an overhead. If an opponent is the type to attempt to riposte immediately or go for a counter, they will attempt to swing back as a response and will be hit with your feinted overhead. Again, this is very situational and requires you to read your opponent and know what type of player they are. Are they the type to swing immediately after blocking? If so, a feint will bait them into attacking and you will strike them while they are in their windup. Are they a turtle that only attacks after being blocked? A couple of feints in a row might break them out of their shell and into vulnerability, but you're better off strafing them or going for a kick. Feints could be more integrated and see more use if counters were buffed, as feinting an opponent's attempt at a counter would always result in free damage. The last two things we will discuss here are strafing and dodging. Strafing is one of the most effective methods of landing damage as you don't have a huge block hitbox. Rather, you must be looking directly at your opponent to block, and even then, being slightly off could result in damage taken. Latency could also be a problem here as well. When in a 1v1, it is very typical for both opponents to attempt to get to the side of the other and get outside of the window of blocking while still being inside the opponent's hitbox. Weapons like the Dane Axe, Messer, Two-Handed Hammer, and Executioner's Axe are particularly good at doing just that, see a ton of play because of it, and are considered to be some of the best weapons in the game. Strafing and getting around an opponent's block reminds me of dead angling from Dark Souls 1, and is something that I got so good at that I had entire builds based around it. If you ever fought a Silver Knight with a scythe in Darkroot Forest back in the day that was particularly good at dead angles, chances are good that was me. More than anything, strafing in Civ 2 feels cheesy on both ends. Hitting someone when they are clearly blocking and seem to be facing you, or getting hit while you're clearly blocking and facing an opponent, is not gratifying when you pull it off, and is anger-inducing when it happens to you. It seems like a bug passed off as a mechanic for this reason, but hey, at least it's one of the few functional mechanics this game has to offer, I guess. Dodging is one of the most used and most useful defensive maneuvers in the game. You can jump to the side or backwards, which can cause your opponent to whiff their attack and give you the opportunity to counterattack. A dodge paired with a sweep is one of the most effective combos in the game, as you can dodge to an opponent's side, avoid getting hit by their attack, and countering with a dead angle, assuming they don't have the time to ready their guard and turn to face you. So it took a while, but now you know just about everything involved in Chivalry 2's combat system. It isn't rocket science, especially when you consider the viability and functionality of what we just discussed. It's for that reason that combat becomes very repetitive. Swing, block, swing, block, swing, block, with occasional hits landing due to varied timing and attack type, along with strafing, punishing whiffs, and heavy attacks. That may sound like you have a lot to work with, but in a vast majority of scenarios, even 1v1s boil down to player 1 swings, player 2 blocks, player 2 swings, player 1 blocks, etc. I never thought I would compliment For Honor, but their combat system is eons more refined than this dog water. You can go on the offensive against multiple players. Some classes have super armor or unblockable hits. You can win initiative and block multiple hits at once, if you're skilled enough. You can activate Revenge at a pivotal time and turn the tide into 1vx. A parry, knockdown, or grab can significantly change the outcome of a fight and require great skill and timing to pull off. Chivalry 2 does not grant you such abilities to overcome the odds, nor is its combat system as deep and tactful, and thus the repetition from the title is explained. Most of the maps are completely one-sided, favoring either the Masons or Agathians. The few that can go either way are primarily TDM. This can be due to a variety of reasons, including spawn distance and objective. For this section, I'm going to analyze two maps to reduce redundancy, the Slaughter of Coxwell and Escape from Fallmire. The other maps have similar general balancing issues, but Coxwell and Fallmire are the biggest offenders in my opinion. As we look at these maps and the general win percentages below, we are taking the overall skill and experience of the team out of the question. The imbalance that I am discussing comes from map design, objective location, spawn distance from objective, wave spawn timing, and any other design-related choices. An imbalance in team skill should be the determining factor between victory and defeat. But even a team of skilled players would still be hard-pressed to defend Coxwell, attack Fallmire, or attack Rudhelm, even against a team of shitters. To start with the Slaughter of Coxwell, it's literally called Coxwell. It overly favors Masons to the point where I've never seen the Agathians win unless they exploit a bug allowing one player to spawn outside the play area and wait for time to tick down. This was removed along with the best part of this map. The best part being a bench that, when sat on, would shrink your player to around 2/3 their usual size. This bug was a lot of fun, and hilarious to see a squad of dwarves tearing up the battlefield. At point 1, the Masons slaughter some peasants, break some doors, and burn down a village. This is frustrating as an Agathian because your first life is a wash since you spawn as one of those peasants being slaughtered and start the game 0-1. The Agathians then spawn far from the objective, giving Mason ample time to get to the torches and burn the buildings. I've seen Agatha hold for a decent time here, but a strong push from the Masons on either side, or a sneaky Mason circling around the map and getting a couple cheeky burns, will win the point a vast majority of the time. Point 2 moves the Masons up the hill to a walled city where they break down a wooden gate and begin to steal chests of gold from the Agathians. Due to the 2 points of interest being on the far right and far left side of the map, if there is an imbalance of Masons on one side, which there typically is, they can overthrow and yank the gold in a couple of trips. The Agathians also spawn a significant distance away, again, from these gold carts, meaning if you're wiped, you have a good 15 to 20 seconds before being able to return to post and defend. On top of that, there are peasants wandering around carrying gold chests that can be plundered, and those peasants will happily walk straight into the Mason spawn and basically hand them their objective. Point 3 moves Masons into a courtyard, with gold and other valuables scattered around the stalls and statue. This is not a free point and has the highest likelihood of an Agathian defense, but I've never seen it pan out that way, even with the recent change of making 10% more gold spawn. A couple good distractions or a strong wall of defense at the statue in the middle of the courtyard spells victory for Mason. The final point is the namesake of the map. It starts with the slaughtering of peasants and ends with the slaughtering of all Agathian knights and waves of peasants. The timer is overly generous, and Agathian knights respawn as peasants when their reinforcements dry up, and they can do little more than throw their life at the aggressing Masons and hope they run out the clock. If the Masons make it to the final point, and you're one of the boys in blue, you can throw your KD ratio in the trash. It is not uncommon for peasants at this hill to hide behind waves of their brethren in order to protect their stat line. Granted, stats don't matter in Chivalry 2, as the game didn't launch with any sort of win-loss, KD, weapon stats, or class stats, and when they were added in a recent update, they were completely wrong. Some weapons were so skewed that it read as if I had 1,200 kills and only 2 deaths. As of the Halloween update that recently went live, my stats were completely wiped. The only thing that survived the slaughter of my stat line is my 60 hours of playtime. During the editing process, the Halloween update for Chivalry 2 dropped, which attempted to rebalance this map. Like I mentioned earlier, you must now collect 10% more loot from both looting objectives, kill 100 Agathian troops instead of 77 at the end, and change spawn times. Despite these changes, I still feel as though red is still at a more than significant advantage, and more drastic changes were needed. I've played the new patch quite a bit, and it still feels exactly the same as previous patches. One-handed swords and heavy shields are still the meta. Poke weapons like the spear and rapier are still big-ticket offenders of going through blocks. Those one-sided conquest maps needed more help, and a new unforeseen issue that has arisen. My game now crashes roughly every 3 matches or so, which was never an issue in previous patches, and is at no fault of my PC, as it can run much larger and expansive games without any problems. So even if I wanted to play this game, which I don't, I can't. The last map I'd like to discuss is Escape from Fallmire, which is a map centered around pushing through a Mason prison camp, freeing your champion, then escaping on friendly boats on a nearby dock. I've played Chivalry 2 for nearly 60 hours, like I just mentioned, and have never seen Agatha win on this map. It is so blatantly one-sided that the furthest I have ever gotten was a game where I was top of the board and became the champion. We pushed to outside the Mason camp, but because of the distance my reinforcements had to run versus the distance enemy reinforcements needed to cover, we were overrun and I was slain by a mix of archers and stray slashes. You start by freeing prisoners from 3 carts. They get progressively further from the Agatha spawn, so the first one drops easy, the second with little resistance, and the third with heavy resistance. I have secured victory by defending the carts multiple times, so the difficulty of this objective cannot be understated. From there, Agatha needs to destroy one of 2 gates with carryable explosives. Your team needs to take over one of the 2 bridges and create a hole for the bomb carrier. This is a difficult point as well, given that most players just want to kill each other and not play objective, leaving the most skilled players to carry the bombs, while scrubs try to hold the line. In a perfect world, this would be the other way around, but sadly, we live in a society. Overall, this is the easiest point for Agatha to win due to the split bridges. Next are releasing more prisoners from cages. They are bundled in 2 major locations. This split was favorable on the last point, because only one gate needed to fall, but now that all prisoners must be released, once one side falls, it becomes a brutally tight bottleneck of players trying to get in on the heavily fortified cages. This is another point that will frequently stop the Agathian advance and heavily favors the Masons. Then you push to a bridge where the Agathians must push the Masons completely off by taking 2 points, one in the back and one in the front. The first point is a freebie, and then there is a massive clash in the middle. In order to advance, Agathians have to break the defenses of the Masons to a point where they create a human barrier at the start of the bridge, totally blocking any defenders from entering the hill. However, due to the distance between the points, Mason is able to quickly stack up reinforcements at their entrance of the bridge, while Agatha has to wait a significant amount of time for their troops to spawn at their end and then run an extra 200 yards to reach the point. If the cages and bridge doesn't stop you, then the final 2 points will, because they are truly ridiculous. Agatha must push into a courtyard where a mere 10 yards from the Mason spawn lies the objective. You must raise the gates to free your champion, and in order to do this, you must spawn trap red for a full 25 seconds. This used to be 30 seconds, but the generous gods at Torn Banner reduced the time by an entire 5 seconds. There are 3 sections of the gate, and only one must be raised for the objective to complete, but it takes 25 seconds for one section of the gate to raise. What this means is that blue will push into the red spawn, pull the lever, fight for their life as the gate slowly raises, only to be felled by red and have all their work reset. Words really cannot express how insane of an expectation it is for one team to dominate and spawn trap the other for a minimum of 25 seconds. Yet it feels like now 3 of these objectives require just that: breaking the 3rd cage at the beginning of the map, winning the entirety of bridge, and now this. But it gets even worse. Once you free the champion, the highest scoring blue player gets to take control of this absolute unit, and then must be escorted to the ships down below. This requires blue to swarm their champion and push down the hill into the boat. It could be a really fun and valiant escape as you cleave through the last of the Masons and embrace freedom once on the docks, but instead this is an impossible task. I've gotten to this point a few times as blue, and countless attempts later, I haven't been able to put the champion on that boat. Agatha respawns by the champion's prison and then has to run back down the hill to rejoin the battle, whereas the Masons have a massive wave spawning camp literally 3 yards off the only path of progression. They can endlessly funnel right back onto the front lines as if they were never killed in the first place. If blue manages to even hold a line at this point, either the champion will make a hasty push and be slain, will forever turtle and succumb to archers, or the match will simply time out and red will take home the victory. Fallmeyer needs help, and I'm happy to see that in the most recent Halloween patch that it got some rebalancing attention that it so desperately needed. The patch notes aren't specific, but it looks like they adjusted the spawn locations, increased the champion's health from 750 to 1000, and also gave him 5 bandages to heal himself. This makes the champion not only the best player on the team, but now a true tank that can take a calculated risk to gain distance or make a final frantic run to the boat. As elated as I am that they have made these changes, my main fear is that it will not be enough and red will still have a 99% win ratio. That, and it's already too late in the game's life cycle to get this map-saving patch out and turn off the faucet of departing players. Despite me playing the new patch multiple times, I've only gotten to Fallmeyer a couple, so I really don't have a say in whether or not these changes have helped it or not. As for the rest of the maps, here is a breakdown of typical win frequency. These percentages are based on my own experiences and posts that I have found online. Lionspire, 40-60 favoring Agatha. Most consider Lionspire to be a very well-balanced map, and I would agree to an extent. The factor that many don't factor in are the team kills from the trebuchets at point 1, which can drastically reduce remaining time or outright lose Masons the game. The push up the bridge to destroy the flags is unnecessarily difficult due to the need to build ladders and cope with the vulnerability during the climb and dismounting at the top. Fighting up to the banners is nigh impossible. Lastly, the final point tasks Mason with destroying 4 trebuchets. After destroying each weapon, an insignificant amount of time is added to the clock. Pair that with the Agatha spawn being outrageously close to the weapons, it puts Mason at a severe disadvantage and requires a major rally and hard push to win. Galencourt, 50-50 favoring neither. Being the most recently added map, Galencourt surprised me at how balanced it is. There are choke points for sure, such as blowing up the second ship, getting the barrels to the second gate, and breaking down the church doors, but if the teams are even, this map could really go either way. Rudhelm, 75-25 favoring Masons. Taking the wall and overtaking the courtyard are 2 very difficult hills for Agatha to win, and as long as the Mason heir has a brain, he will turtle up the stairs at the end of a long corridor and will live out the timer. Mason will have enough reinforcements that spawn so close to the air that even if they just hold block and throw their body at the blue oppressors, they will eventually reign victorious. Dark Forest, 65-35 favoring Masons. The most difficult point is capturing the watchtower close to the beginning of the siege, but if you can break through at both checkpoints, Masons can take the Agathian at both sides and secure the hill. From there, it is pretty easy to escort the carts, burn the blockade, break into the castle, and kill the Duke. The only points I have seen Agatha succeed are the watchtower and cart escort. The Duke can be assaulted from multiple directions, and the castle wall can be breached by placing breaching charges on the door or being targeted by trebuchets that are well out of enemy range. Siege weapons are completely broken, and more often than not do more harm than good. On most conquest maps, which are the maps with multiple objectives that we just spoke about, there are siege weapons in the form of trebuchets and ballista. Trebuchets fling stones a long range, having a massive hitbox and one-shot every player within its range, enemy or friendly. They are almost exclusively utilized by players on offense, but on Lionspire, the defense can use a trebuchet for a short time before being pushed back by the offense. On Dark Forest, if you make it to the outside the castle walls, there are defensive and offensive trebuchets. These, once again, seem like a great addition, but almost exclusively do more harm than good. On Lionspire, the Masons have a long and uphill push, where a cart needs to be escorted to the city's gate. Once it is close, and even once the next objective pops, the Masons still spawn a significant distance away from the objective. Players mounting the trebuchet will constantly fling stones directly onto the point, killing some enemies, sure, but also devastating their friendlies that are trying to make progress on the push or put damage on the gate. Agatha is not punished for this. They spawn just a few feet away inside the walls, but Mason is devastated, set back by a 20-second run back up to the point. I have lost games at this beginning point because absolutely smooth-brained Neanderthals will sit on the treb, team kill for 7 minutes, and still top the board. When initiating a vote kick, either players will not receive the prompt, will not vote, or will vote to keep the traitor because they look at the board and assume they're doing God's work and slaying face, when in reality they are single-handedly causing the team to lose. Also, for whatever reason, the automatic kick feature that boots players for excessive team damage does not trigger due to trebuchet team damage, so these smoothies can just sit and spam rocks, killing 2 teammates for every 1 enemy, top the leaderboard, and lose the game. Oh, and God forbid you beat someone to the trebuchet because instead of being cordial and letting you use it, they'll just straight up team kill you for it. Just like in Halo when you beat XX Tryhard Pwn Noob's 69-420 XDXX to the sniper off spawn, they'll just bash your skull in for it. The ballista aren't much better, but they lack the devastating wiping power of the treb. They one-shot enemies and take a decent bit of skill to aim, what with leading targets and all that, but any sort of one hit in a game like this is incredibly annoying. I would be able to live with the ballista, but friendlies make it unusable. Salty pricks will again just TK you off of it so they can use it, or they will stand in front of you, making it nigh impossible to avoid a TK and still put in work with it. There isn't a direct fix for how players act in a game, but there are ways to make it better. Currently, you can destroy and rebuild the trebuchets and ballista an infinite number of times. I suggest this be changed. Any party can damage the siege weapons, and if they break more than 3 times, it is permanently broken for the rest of the game. Yes, this will lead to seemingly more detrimental trolling, as a team could be set back quite heavily if these weapons are purposefully destroyed, but 9 out of 10 times an active trebuchet or ballista is not going to be the determining factor in a game. There could also be a system implemented to either force a player off the trebuchet for dealing too much team damage or outright removing that player from the game. The threshold for a kick could be much higher while mounted on the treb, but any more than 5 team kills should be enough to justify it. There could also be a system implemented to detect when a friendly is hit within a ballista within 3 meters of it, and forgive that player for killing them. No point reduction or excessive team damage penalty. There could be a small gray ring around the ballista to make this area clear to players, and a patch note could discuss this to better inform the few bad apples that this would affect. A short but sweet solution to the trebuchet would be to drastically reduce the amount of points received when killing an enemy, and increase the points lost when killing a teammate. Force them to aim better, not drop rocks directly on the point, or incentivize them to not use it at all. The final option that would remove some of what little realism there is in Chivalry 2 would be to remove most or all of the team damage inflicted by the trebuchet and make ballista bolts pass through friendlies. Everything I just suggested would directly make the game more enjoyable to play and would remove players' avenues for disrupting games. One of the solutions I wanted to suggest is removing them entirely, as they don't contribute much aside from pain anyway, but that really doesn't solve the problem. It removes a part of the game and a key element to a few objectives. The addition of a bare-bones mode that removes siege weapons, equipment, ultimates, and archers would be a welcome addition, even as a limited-time mode, and would get me back on the game for a while. As it stands, the siege weapons need a serious change, and any of the above solutions would be a step in the right direction. Torn Banner has released patches that fix menial issues and removed a blatantly overpowered, deceptive, and downright broken weapon, but has otherwise not taken any steps to actually make the mechanics featured and stressed in the tutorial functional. It has been 8 months since Chivalry 2's release, and Torn Banner has released 2 major patches, both of which have solved none of the problems that I have previously stated. It seems that their primary focus has been removing bots in populated games, adding limited-time game modes, fixing cosmetic-related issues, and ensuring that matchmaking performs correctly. Don't get me wrong, these are all worth focusing attention towards to confirm that your game is performing up to standard and keeping people invested, but there are much bigger fish to fry that the developers are either overlooking or ignoring, and thus are hemorrhaging players by the day. The best patch that was released removed the one-handed spear, which would poke through a blocking opponent and was, in every sense of the word, broken. This is yet to be repaired and re-added to the game, but the game is better off without it if I'm being honest. The following patch added 2 new maps, a new 3v3 arena game mode, and more visual flair. Riposte now flash yellow once performed, and counters flash blue. However, the functionality of these mechanics did not change. Both of them are still meaningless, as initiative is deceptive and is completely determinant on the matchup of opponents and the weapons they are using. A vast majority of the time, initiative does not make one lick of difference, resulting in spam. Hits will still go through block, which is an especially apparent issue with all spear-type weapons in the game. The lack of consistency and inability to gain the upper hand on an opponent or group of opponents makes this game unrewarding to play, and any attempt at mastering the quote-unquote mechanics results in frustration, as these mechanics do not function as intended and can be considered inconsistent at best, thus the second key word of the title. Torn Banner has missed their window of opportunity to repair their game. Some have speculated their radio silence and lack of major updates is due to all patches and updates requiring approval from the console overlords, Microsoft and Sony, which is a long and arduous process. This may be somewhat true, but players have been talking about these issues since the first week of release, and after 2 patches, nothing has been done about it. My only true thought is this was all in Torn Banner's design, and that they view their game as a mostly complete product with minor functionality and performance tweaks being necessary. They must think that everything is working as intended. Where have I heard that before? A third patch was released as a Halloween update. This added a new weapon, the rapier, which I imagine is the replacement for the spear. They also added new armors, customization options, fixed general networking, and rebalanced some of the maps. This was a much-needed update when the game was still relevant a few months ago, but even after experiencing this update firsthand, I still have the same frustrations and no will to boot it up again. The maps they attempted to fix still feel unbalanced, the addition of new cosmetics was unnecessary, and the quote-unquote general networking fixes don't seem to have done anything. This may be due less to general networking issues and more so due to a general lack of players to keep everyone under 200 ping. Class balancing makes no sense. Damage increases are improperly distributed throughout the classes. For starters, there are two types of damage multipliers, chop and blunt. Chop weapons do an additional 25% damage to knights and 17.5% additional damage to footmen, while blunt weapons do an additional 50% to knights and 35% to footmen. The knight class has the most HP and lowest mobility, meaning it is supposed to be a durable tank that can soak damage and stay in team fights longer, but these weapons and their insane damage scaling completely diminishes their health, mitigating that extra HP. Footmen for the most part are well balanced, as their large shields and fast weapons can be offset by this additional damage and allow them to be slain, assuming you can find enough openings to land some hits. You might notice that there are no multipliers for vanguards and archers. For archers this is fine, as they only have 90 HP anyway, and 2 heavy attacks is enough to clean down those cowards. But vanguard's immunity to additional damage, versatile weapon choice, and well-rounded other stats makes it the standout class in nearly every regard. Not to mention they have access to some of the best weapons in the game, like the Messer, which is considered by many to be the best weapon in the game. These kits and their respective multipliers are unbalanced. The Vanguard is overpowered while the Knight is underpowered. I feel as though archers and footmen are in a good spot, but we need to discuss some changes to make the Knights tanks and make Vanguards glass cannons. Rebalancing Knights are easy. They're supposed to be walking tanks, so let's make them as such. Chopping weapons would be useless against them, who wear heavy armor from head to toe, so I suggest entirely removing the additional 25% damage dealt to them. Blunt weapons may need to be dialed back from 50% to maybe a conservative 40 or 35%, but given their health stat, that might be unnecessary, and we need them to have a counter in order to not swap them from underpowered to overpowered. Vanguards are a little trickier, as they're meant to be the all-rounder unit that is balanced in every way. Their kit is what gives them the most advantage, but their immunity to chop and blunt also seems a bit strange. Vanguards wear chainmail and leather armor. Chainmail is heavily effective against slash attacks, but leather softens blunt damage. However, I do feel as though blunt damage would be more effective, so a 50 to 20% damage multiplier would be fair. However, still, there are more ways to further balance the game. Adding damage reductions for chop and blunt is a good start, but there could also be multipliers and reductions for different attack types as well. Slashes could be classified as chop and stack with the multipliers already in place. Overheads could be classified as blunt damage and stack accordingly as well. For stabs, a third type of damage could be added in piercing. Vanguards could be weak to piercing as well, considering that chainmail and leather block slashing, not stabbing. Knights could be resistant to stabs because, like we established, they wear massive full-body suits of steel armor, and footmen it could really go either way or not affect them one way or the other. While we're talking about balancing, fire damage doesn't make any sense. Currently, the game acts as if everyone is coated in highly flammable oil. The moment you step in fire, your entire body is covered in flames and ticks your health for around 5 seconds. It goes without saying, but this is not how fire works and needs a change. If a player is hit directly with a flame pot, the current fire damage system should be enacted, but if a player just walks through fire, that player should take tick damage only for the duration they are standing in the flames. And lastly, if a player is shot with a fire arrow, the arrow should do more damage, but it shouldn't proc a tick. It's not like an arrow on fire is going to set you head to toe on fire. Shields and one-handed weapons have significant advantages over two-handed weapons. Despite my praise of the weapon balancing and each weapon having its strengths and weaknesses, after extensive playtime and contemplation amongst the community, shields and one-handed weapons have a significant advantage over their slower two-handed counterparts due to speed and near invulnerability when blocking. Despite the potential damage output of these large weapons, speed is what wins fights. Since the initiative system is dodgy and there are no ways to guarantee hits off of true counters, kicks, or jabs, to put yourself in the best position to land a hit during an opponent's vulnerable state is to bring the fastest weapon you can to the engagement. Let's say a player with a greatsword has initiative. Their attacks are supposed to come out slightly faster, and opponents' attempts at a counterstrike are supposed to be slower, but due to connection and no true initiative, the one-handed player can end up beating a two-handed player, even when in a disadvantaged state. This causes the two-handed player to recoil, lose initiative, force defensive play, and take damage. The game even states that when you have one initiative and are in an advantageous position, you should press that advantage and continue swinging, but this is situational, not gospel. Shields also make players nearly invulnerable, as even when they are lowered can block hits from archers and some incoming attacks. The tutorial states that getting around an enemy's block is a viable tactic to deal cheeky damage, but you can toss that advice right out the window if you're face to face with a shielded enemy. If you're more quick-witted and ballsy, you may be able to land a cheeky kick to break that turtle's shell, but more often than not, they'll dodge. You'll miss, or they'll attack right as you are most vulnerable. I return to this argument and I apologize, but Chivalry 2 is on the cusp of greatness if it would only make their mechanics fully functional. Counters should act as parries. The window for counterattack should be longer so that two-handed players have ample time to get their counter hit in. One-handed weapons, when in a disadvantaged state, should not be able to beat a two-handed weapon to the punch, deal damage, and regain initiative. Kicks and jabs should come out faster, and if landed should guarantee a counter hit on an opponent. Just by making these minor changes, two-handed and one-handed weapons would be balanced, and the combat would be more of a meticulous dance rather than a swinging free-for-all. Another good addition would be changes to stamina drain for players defending with swords and shields, or just a one-handed. And lastly, we arrive at archers. Archers are really dumb. There, I said it. It's obnoxious to get zoned with no viable way of retaliation aside from throwing your own weapons or throwing knives if you happen to have those on your kit. They do way too much damage for the dingy weapons that they use, and there is no damage reduction, only bonus damage for headshots. Archers, and specifically the crossbow, need to be changed. The most pivotal point I want to make is as follows. Knights should be near invulnerable to archers, but for whatever godforsaken reason, the crossbow does blunt damage, meaning that knights can be headshotted for over 100 damage, nearly one hit killing them. For the umpteenth time, knights wear massive suits of armor. A wooden arrow from a bow or a wooden bolt from a crossbow is going to shatter on impact. Archers need damage reductions if they land a hit on an armored foe, or if they hit appendages aside from the head. They could honestly use a damage reduction in general, given that they are currently a highly sought-after class that is so consistently overused that Torn Banner has capped the amount of archers that can be on a team, and teams are constantly sitting at that capped amount. Players love the idea of going 46-0, even though they are sitting in the back of the map and contributing nothing to the objective. Archers shouldn't be going 46-0 to begin with. Archers shouldn't be topping the board. And if I'm completely honest, archers shouldn't be in the game, and a contributing factor to me not playing it anymore. Getting zoned is frustrating. It's like dying to a random frag in Call of Duty. Some great solutions would be what I just mentioned, or the addition of a bare bones mode that disables archers, throwing weapons, ultimates, and siege weapons. Chivalry 2 had the potential to be a shining star in a niche genre of medieval combat games. The original Chivalry seemed to have started it all, and was the first game of its kind that was popularized and offered the type of combat and mechanics that it did. There have since been imitators of its success, such as Mordau, Mountain Blade, For Honor, and Kingdom Come Deliverance, that have changed the basic blueprint of medieval warfare and put their own spin on it. For Honor drastically overhauled the combat, making it more of a traditional fighting game with combos, confirms, skills, traits, and more. Kingdom Come Deliverance changed the focus from mindless multiplayer combat to a more story-driven and role-playing type of experience. Chivalry 2, unfortunately, did not innovate and fell flat on its face, delivering nothing new or exciting from their first installment, aside from an extreme graphical improvement, general gameplay smoothness, and more polished combat and menuing systems. The imbalance, repetition, lack of story, and no real sense of progression, aside from a very basic leveling system and cosmetics, have taken their toll on myself and many other community members, as we feel we have been left with a shell of a game. It doesn't help that Civ 2 released in what felt like a beta state, and not receiving any timely major updates has left lobbies dead and this game abandoned. I say that with only anecdotal evidence though, as there are no population graphs, maps, or player counts that I can find. Server browsers aren't much help either, as there is a limited supply of them and the player counts within servers are constantly in flux. Due to this game releasing on Epic Games, we don't even have Steam charts to go off of. However, multiple prominent YouTubers have picked up this game and just as quickly dropped it. On nearly every forum surrounding this game, you'll see a few comments regarding the dying fanbase or influx of bot lobbies, and in my own experience, after the first few weeks of random queuing, subsequent queues have put me into lobbies where I recognize the names of multiple players, and I can also personally attest to getting into lobbies with no actual people, just myself and 39 bots. I've come away from Civ 2 feeling like I got good at a bad game, that the techniques I mastered was more of mastering cheese than actual mechanics, and that there could have been and should have been much more love and support early into the game's life. I recognize that Torn Batter Studios is a small team of dedicated developers with little to no financial support from major publishers, but if you want to compete in the video game industry, you have to innovate, give us something we haven't seen before, change mechanics, add new ones, promptly listen to community feedback, engage with your fan base, create free seasons, maybe with exclusive cosmetics, or add special rewards for leveling up. Pretty much anything aside from what's currently in place. If you were to pick this game up, I wouldn't spend more than $20 on it, nor would I go into it with any more expectations than a basic and repetitive game where you wildly sling your weapon of choice and hope for a good outcome.
You're still here? It's over. Go home. Go.
Once again, I found myself with much more to say than originally intended, and much more time has passed between this video and the It Takes Two video. I've made yet another life change, and now that I have settled back into some sense of normalcy, I intend to put more time into YouTube and decreasing the time between videos. What with the Bungie supercuts being over, I don't have any supplemental content planned, but that's okay, as those videos cost me my monetization now for the second time, but were more of a project for me that I also wanted to share with you. Plus, I don't really give a shit about making money off of this channel or getting big. I really just want to spur discussion, share my thoughts on the games I get behind, and create for the sake of creation. This is my outlet. I don't want to set anything in stone, but I want to talk about Back 4 Blood in detail next, then focus on Halo Infinite once that releases. In between that, I would like to make a quick video on Tribes of Midgard. If you'd like to connect, communicate, or collaborate, check the description for ways to get in touch with me, or leave a comment below. Thanks for sharing part of your day with the rantings of a madman, and I hope to see you all soon.